Thank you. Well, I want to say to Rick and Susan, thank you for letting us use your front porch. I'm very glad to be here. I want to thank State Representative Joey Andrews for being here and all of you, including our field organizer, Adam Gardini. They don't get enough credit for toting the load. I am so happy to be here. The most fun I think I ever had in a campaign in my life. That's a stretch, but I bet about, but in 2008, when Hillary was in the Democratic primary, I did for weeks nothing but front porch rallies. And I loved it because, I mean, here we are. They're real, you're talking to your neighbors, everything's on the level. And, you know, we're involved in a campaign against evil. I don't know about evil. I do know it's not on the level. And so I just want to take a few minutes to say some things that all of you probably know, but that I hope you can say to other people between now and Election Day. I know I have a unique slant on this election. First, I'm familiar with the job we're running for. And you did pretty well when I had it. And secondly, I know both the candidates. And for years, I had, when I was just an ex-president, running my foundation, trying to help people, trying to do things, Donald Trump was perfectly nice and sane and civil to me. And one day I woke up accused of everything under the sun, and I wasn't even the candidate. It's amazing how reality shifts from time to time. So I want to talk about something most people in Michigan have a fair amount of knowledge of. Football. And baseball. You got a great ball team there, almost made it to the World Series. So here's what I want to say. You know, in this season, America has become pretty obsessed, as we always do, about the World Series, the coming college football playoffs, what's going to happen to pro football. And there's a good chance that's true. And why is that? And why do we like it so much? We like it because it's exciting, it shows excellence, and by and large, we think it's on the level because they're all playing under the same set of rules. Yeah, every now and then, you know, a referee or an umpire makes a wrong call. They're human. Welcome to the human race. But now we have all kinds of corrections we didn't when I was a boy and first fell in love with these sports. You know, they got all the video replays and all that. And so we get thrilled by a contest that sometimes the people we want to win, and sometimes they don't. But we think it's on the level. And they all live under the same set of rules. And our politics is not like that, is it? It should be. In 2020, a lot of people who were not on the winning side were election officials that went out of their way to make sure the vote was honestly counted. They became demonized in the MAGA Republican Party for doing their job and honoring their oaths to the Constitution. I was with a former congressman, Republican congressman from Illinois yesterday, who's now traveling, campaigning for Kamala Harris. Yeah. Because he said abandoning the Constitution was a step too far. You got Dick Cheney, who I never thought we'd have anything to sound like that, endorsed Kamala Harris. Why? He saw firsthand what happened to his own daughter when she favored following the law and the Constitution. It's fascinating. And it really matters about what kind of president you're going to be. So if I didn't know Kamala Harris, I would be for the following reasons. But first is foremost, I think she believes in the Constitution. She's telling you if you vote for her and she wins, if you don't think she's done a good job, you can vote her out next time. That's the American way. I had some harrowing experiences with it from time to time. You can vote her out. He said in a call to a very far-right religious group, he said, if you want to make America great again, you've got to get out and vote for me. That's fine. Really, it's fine. Legitimate plea. Then he said, you've got to do it one more time. But if you do it one more time, you'll never have to vote again, because by the next election, we'll have it rigged and we won't have to worry about it. And he was dead serious and didn't know anybody else was listening to him when he did it. Now, you need to think about that. There is nothing worth that risk. And that's why I find myself increasingly on platforms large and small with people who've been Republicans their whole lives. My family lives in a little town, 20-something miles north of New York. And we have a fair number of Republicans. And I get along with them. We don't shout at each other. There's only one that loves to call everybody else names. He does. He hadn't got him out of it yet. I'm working on it. But my point is, we've always had our differences. We're always going to have our differences. And nobody's perfect. But this is dangerous. Anybody that tells people, you just got to get me there one more time, and then you'll never have to worry again, that's not America. And, you know, look at all these people he likes. President of North Korea, President of Russia. All these people that want to stay for life. I'm telling you, if you want to stay for life, you stop thinking about your constituents and you only think about yourself. So, that's reason number one. I'm for Harris. Reason number two is her economic plan's a lot better. And look, a lot better. People can say whatever they want about Joe Biden and the cost of living, and I'll explain that, my view of that in a minute. When he leaves office, we'll have had the best 4 years in American history for new jobs in a 4-year period. And again, and Trump did this to Obama. Do you remember this? In 2016, when he ran, oh, the economy was terrible. Oh, it was awful. We were creating 8 million jobs a year for 2 years in a row. But people didn't feel it yet. Then Trump gets elected, and you would have thought we had the finest economy on earth. And he did it all in 36 hours. I mean, basically, it went from really awful to, oh. That's what he's going to do, try to do again. So he glided for 2 years on what, basically the downturn of Obama, when it began to slow down a little bit. And he reflected then, and we are dealing now with something I wish you would talk to all your neighbors about between now and the election. If you think about anything you've done in your life, there are probably a few things you could do in an afternoon that were worthwhile and linger, but most things were not built in a day. And Trump is a great brag and blame politician. He's good, isn't he? I mean, look at this beautiful day. I did that. Aren't you grateful? Really, I mean, man, I know it rained yesterday, but if I'd been president, it never would have happened. I mean, he's great at it, right? So that's what he did when he won in 2016. The economy is terrible, it's awful, and 2 days later, man, I made it great. The truth is, it was great all the time, but you didn't feel it. And think of this. There are lots of things that happen in a country in the course of a lifetime where things change, and it takes 2 or 3 years before in our big complicated country we can get a majority support for admitting it changed. When I was elected in 92, I said, we got to get rid of this big deficit. It's driving our interest rates too high. It's stagnating middle class economies. It's driving working poor people's incomes down. We got to get rid of it. Then, and I told the voters, I said, we're going to raise taxes a little bit. We're going to cut spending a little. And it's going to feel like we're going to the dentist without painkillers. And you won't like it, but you will like it when we get there. So it took 3 full years before a majority of the people would acknowledge that they felt it coming down. And I understood that. But you have no idea. I saw there we lost 15 or 16 unbelievably good members of Congress because people didn't feel it yet in 1994. And I'd wake up in a cold sweat for literally 10 or 15 years after that, thinking of them. They were my friends, they were my allies, and a lot of them knew that they lived in closely divided districts, and they walked the plank.
Country first.
One of them, Marjorie Mezvinsky, was the mother of my now son-in-law. And so I've tried to pay her back over the years in some way or another. But my point is, all of us have this. We've had something that, this has been changing for 2 or 3 years, but I didn't see it. I didn't feel it. So Trump is banking on being lucky twice. Well, he's telling us how terrible it is. And it is. The cost of living's gone up too much. But fuel prices are going down because of the Harris policy which is basically what Biden's done, is all of the above. Produce the energy, clean the environment, and create no jobs. So that's going down. What else are people upset about? Food prices. As a former Attorney General of California, she was an officer in one of 37 states, 37, that make price gouging in the grocery business illegal. And now, it's hard to imagine sometimes if you live in a smaller town and you don't have a big grocery store, you have an independently owned one. But the truth is, most Americans buy their food in one of 5 big chains, where 1% difference in profit margin makes a huge difference because you've got tens of millions of customers. And we know what happened during COVID. The demands for food stayed up here and the supply was interrupted, so the price went up. And then the supply chain was fixed and we had all we wanted and needed. And the price increases slowed down, but the price didn't actually drop, right? That's your experience, everybody. And we do need somebody looking at that, because we don't want to fix the prices and we don't want to bankrupt people if they sell food, but we don't want to be taken for a ride. So and believe me, I know how this works because I used to be an attorney general too. If the federal government is looking at this through the Justice Department, they won't be raising these prices unless they know it can withstand legal scrutiny. It's a simple thing, isn't it? But if you're a problem solver, that's what you look for. What is the quickest, simplest way to try to address this? And I've come to know Kamala Harris over the last several years, and she's a problem solver. So that's important. The third big element of this price thing is housing. And look what happened there. When the first crash occurred back in 2008, there were bad lending practices and there was a collapse of a lot of housing. And I'll give you a simple example. The 2 biggest hit states were Rhode Island, tiny Rhode Island, and Nevada, for totally different reasons. But I just was in Nevada. They're still just being driven crazy by this because they left all these, the people left Nevada. They couldn't make a living there anymore. Tourism dried up. So the value of these big apartment houses as places to rent or places to buy collapsed. So these big banks came in and they bought them all up. And then when things got active again, they drove up the price. And it's horrible. So Kamala Harris said, look around where this is not happening. It's obvious that we need at least 3 million more housing units to buy or to rent. And the government should help people to pay the down payment. This has never been proposed before, as far as I can find out. She said, we'll make a chunk of the down payment so people can afford to get started, because so many people had to deplete their savings in the last few years. And then we're out of here. You still got to make your payments. You still got to do what you do. But think of that. That's the kind of stuff that you do if you're in the problem-solving business. And I thought, I never thought of that before. And I was Attorney General, and we had a price gouging law. And that is the job of a president, to solve problems. Now, if you agree with that, you got to be for Kamala Harris over Donald Trump. Because old Trump, he thinks the job of a president is to divide and blame. He thinks that we're in the divisive tribalism business. You want to be on my side, you got to hate the other guys. You want to be on my side, you got to favor one set of rules for us, another set for everybody else. Want to be on my side? Every time I ask you, you believe me or your lying eyes? You got to say, you, master. How many bad jokes are there about that? But this is about whether we can have a place to live, whether we ever get a chance or see our kids' generation get a chance to buy a house. And I'm telling you, it's practically, this choice between Trump and Harris has a lot of practical consequences. Really practical consequences. And when I was president, it was the first time that home ownership had ever gone over 2/3. It went up to almost 70%. I know how important it is. But I got a guy to divine the system, Henry Cisneros, who had been mayor of San Antonio and had done it. He knew what he was doing. Trump got all these people to write that Project 2025. Who knew what they were doing too. But what they were doing was trying to divide us permanently. And what Kamala's trying to do is to unite us so that we can take advantage of our differences. You know, diverse groups make better decisions than homogeneous groups. They do. I look around here at this guy. I can just tell by looking at you, I've had a lot of practice over the years, that there are people here who've done all kinds of different things in their lives. So if we had to go build a building that had burned downtown, most all of us could find something we could contribute that would make a difference. So that's the second big difference here is you think inclusive tribalism is good, or do you want divisive tribalism? The government, the Biden-Harris administration, they had a solution that they agreed with the most conservative Republicans in the Senate on immigration. And it was a good thing. And our side recommended that the law that we had followed since the 1960s was not sustainable anymore. When President Johnson in the 1960s signed our current immigration law dealing with emergency people that just show up at the border. And he said, and the law says, you cannot come into this country unless you have a legitimate fear of danger to yourself or your family. And the reason they wrote the law like that is they were worried about communism sweeping through Central and South America. And it worked fine for a while. And you could also use it when there were natural disasters because people had no place to live, which meant their kids were in greater danger. And we have Nicaraguan citizens in America today that I approved coming in the 90s. And I never got any grief for it. Then I had some problems with Cuba because like we did back in the 1980, remember that when the Castro opened the jails and I was the governor of Arkansas. They shortened temporarily my political career. But they tried to do that again when I was president. And we had a system there where we talk to Cuba through Mexico. And so I knew the president of Mexico and I were pretty good friends. I said, call your buddies down in Havana and say that they already got one election on me. We're not going to have two. And it's not because of me. It's because this is wrong. They can't decide they're mad at the United States and American policy and send a bunch of people on boats that they got out of their prisons and their jail cells. That's their responsibility, not ours. Anyway, we did a deal. And they knew that I had seen President Carter's chances to be retained in office dramatically damaged by that. Also, it was wrong. It was wrong what they did for themselves and their people. And I said, look, we got a lot of Cubans in America. They're working hard. They're making a real contribution. You cannot empty your prisons and your mental hospitals and expect us to back him. So you can forget about this. And I know how to get them back, and don't you think I can't. I know where Guantanamo is, and there is a door at Guantanamo that goes right onto Cuba. And that's where they're all coming in. And you're going to be humiliated. I'm not going to let you do this. We are growing, however, and we could use a few more people in our great country. And I would be honored to give some people a chance to do it, to be here from Cuba. But we have to raise the quota legally, and they'd have to pass the test legally. And so we went from 10 to 20,000 a year. And they all did fine. But my point is, you have to want to solve problems to do this. Okay? So she wanted to do that. And the Republicans in the Senate wanted to do it. There's always plenty for us to fight about. We can actually solve problems every now and then and still have something left to argue about. And they wanted to do it. And I thought, boy, this is going to be really good. Until, who killed it? He killed it he told the Republicans, he said, you cannot do this. You cannot do this. How can I run for president and beat them without a problem? It wasn't like there were no other problems we could argue about. He said, this problem is identified with me. I've got people terrified of immigrants. I've got them scared of our differences, and I want you to stop this and kill this. And they had the bill written. And they walked away from it because they were scared. Now, if you believe in governing by division and never solving problems, Trump's your guy. But if you think you hire people to do their best to solve problems or make them better and give us something else to worry about tomorrow, you got to vote for Kamala Harris because she is really good on this. So I could tell you the same thing about health care. Remember, when I watched the vice presidential debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance, I really like Governor Walz, and I was the governor for 12 years. He's been a very consequential governor of Minnesota. He's achieved things that I would have been proud to achieve. He is really good. But I couldn't believe, and so he was very polite to J.D. Vance, and I appreciated that. Except when Vance said that it was no big deal that Trump wanted to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, he'd actually strengthened it. And I thought, what a whopper. He tried to drive a stake in it, and there was no guardrails except for John McCain. And John McCain, whom I knew quite well, said, "This is crazy. What are we doing?" And he tried to take health care from all the people and to strip all the protections for people with pre-existing conditions. And remember what happened? This was less than a decade ago, 2018. The Republicans lost the midterm elections by 8.5 points, the biggest loss in a century. The biggest loss in a century because they did that. And now they're trying to do it again. You got to give them, they're, persistent. But Trump can't stand you to believe that anything good was done by anybody else, ever. And the truth is, when you're a president, you don't do anything by yourself much, except a few foreign policy things and occasional executive order. You got to have the Congress. So you can't let this happen. We also, thanks to the current administration, have for seniors on Medicare a $35 a month cap on insulin and a $2,000 a year cap on out-of-pocket medical expenses. So here's a good comparison. Her position is we should have those benefits for people who aren't on Medicare because they're younger if they're in the same income group and they need it. There are a lot of people who need that. That's her position. His position is I'm going to get rid of all that. But then he has some ridiculous thing like, I'm not going to put taxes on Social Security. Well, by and large, most Social Security is not taxed. It sounds like a big deal until you look at how many people will be affected. So there's the things that I wanted to say about the economy. The only substantive change that will affect food is the price gouging law. The problems with housing will be affected if you build a few million more units and make them available by helping young people, particularly who don't have much upfront money, with the down payment. And the problem on energy is solving itself. And we've got more people working now on all of the belt process. We've got people in solar, wind, geothermal, and people working in natural gas in a way that will stop the leakage of the pipes, which is what you've got to worry about. And I was governor of a state which was fracking before anybody used the word. They didn't know. It was a big part. But believe it or not, we didn't have any trouble with the Republicans that were on the Oil and Gas Commission. I remember this. And we had people there come to say, you got to relax all these fracking legislation. And the guys on the commission would say, do you live here? Is this your state too? Do you care if our water table is protected? Do you care if our kids are protected? And they would vote for strict standards. So we made a lot of money, and they had to pay for decent, safe piping and drilling. So that's my pitch. I don't like to, I've reached a point now where I don't give conventional speeches anymore. I just try to discuss things with people. And this is not a close question. I mean, I'm just telling you. She would be light years better than he is unless you really do think that the only thing that's important is demonizing the other side. And if you think our divisions are far more important than our common humanity, and you want to do whatever it takes to keep us torn up and upset, he's your guy.
Turn the page.
But turning the page is a big part of going forward. And I may be wrong, but I think people are sick and tired of politicians acting like kids on a grade school playground. And I think that. I told somebody the other day, if we raised our kids the way Trump's tried to raise his politicians, they'd all have to go to reform school for a while before they could go to college. I mean, we're laughing, but you know I'm telling the truth. You know that's true. And so, I'll say again, I know them both. At various times in life, I've been friends with both of them. But they've both shown their colors. She's a problem solving. He's a problem maker. She wants diverse groups around her and has proved that she believes that people with different skills make better decisions working together. He wants people who say yes every time to whatever it is and whatever the evidence is. And I'm telling you, I have been there. That's a recipe for disaster. This is not close. You will be so proud. You'll be able to tell your kids and your grandkids. I tell everybody, the only thing I'm campaigning for anymore is my grandchildren's future. And I believe so strongly that she will be a fine president. I believe he will be a fine vice president. He reminds me of home. He reminds me of the coaches and teachers I had when I was a boy growing up and going to public school, who never quite had enough money to buy good clothes or do things, but boy, they were smart as whips. They knew what they were saying. And it ought to make you feel better about her that she picked him. So, please, we got a few days. We can't get there without Michigan. America needs Michigan. And I think it's going to be okay, but we all got to get caught trying. Everybody. Yep. Knock some more. And don't do it the way he does. Not with a clenched fist, but with an open hand. There's almost, first of all, a lot of these people think they have to be foreign are really good people, aren't they? They get all their information from one place. And so you're not going to get anywhere with them, tell them how stupid and wrong. You know, that's, I had a teacher once. I will leave with this because I want you to think about it. I had a teacher who used to be a coach, like Walz. And he had to teach a few years more to get in his full retirement. And the teachers in Arkansas had the second lowest pay in the country. And he had to survive in his old age with his pension. His wife was my American history teacher, and his sister-in-law was my geometry and algebra teacher. And he taught 8th grade science. That was, for me, 65 years ago. Here is what he said in our last class. So help me, I remember it verbatim. He said, kids, you know, and to be charitable, this guy was not a handsome man by conventional standards, right? He kept gaining weight as he got older and he couldn't afford new clothes, so he's bursting out of his sheet clothes. He had Coke bottle glasses because there were no contacts back then. He had a big beak nose and he had the Coke bottle glasses and he smoked cheap cigars out of a plastic holder. You can see it, can't you? Okay, so we're sitting there in the last day of class. And he said, kids, you are not going to remember anything you learned in 8th grade science. But he said, if you don't remember anything else, you just remember this. Every morning I get up and I go into the bathroom and I throw water in my face. And I put the shaving cream on and I shave. And I wipe all the cream off, pat my face down, and I look in the mirror and say, Vernon, you're beautiful. And he said, and he knew exactly what he was doing, and he said, you remember that, kids. Everybody wants to believe they're beautiful. If you remember that one thing, it'll take you a long way in life. And I learned a lot from that man. And he believed we could all grow together and go together. And everybody wants to add something to the puzzle of life, their little piece. We're not going to get there bad-mouthing people the way Donald Trump does. So keep a smile on your face and a song in your heart and go out and win this election. We need you. Thank you.